Hello again, and welcome to Inner Migrations Module 1 Lecture 2. This one is called Herd Mentality and Migrations. It's mainly about elephants, and we're going to talk a lot about elephants on this one, and how they behave and how they relate to us, and more importantly, the relevance to ourselves. So sit back and enjoy. Now, some of nature's most spectacular events are the result of the inner drive by animals to breed, feed and survive. Migrations are a major factor that has been built into the natural plan to both ensure the species' survival and the well-being of the environment that sustains them. It was once calculated that an elephant herd used to basically walk the whole of Africa from south to north or vice versa, then halfway down again before dying of old age, roughly about 70 to 80 years old. Many years ago, elephant herds were often in the hundreds, not in the scattered herds of double figures we found nowadays. They would stumble into an area of grassland or savanna and proceed to trample, uproot, and basically destroy shrubs, push trees over, and generally annihilate a given area. Then they would move on, crossing non-existent to them international boundaries, and basically disappear, never to be seen again. Slowly, the ravaged area would recover and become even more lush and healthy, as the uprooted trees provided cover for seeding grasses. Seeds that were fertilized by passing through the stomach would sprout, spreading the gene pool from distant areas, and the waterholes would be naturally enlarged by the passage of so many large bodies. In other words, nature's way of gardening, enhancing and optimizing this incredibly fertile environment. The elephant tracks would fade away into the far mountains. As they crossed distances, their diet changed. Plants that were absent in the one country were abundant in another. Bulbs and roots found in carefully chosen age-old areas were eaten with relish. A portion of this banquet went into building their enamel, so the ivory got bigger and bigger, with one tusk being used as a tool, the other as a weapon. As their teeth got worn away to be replaced by the ones behind it, they got corpulent and happy. Wisdom was passed down from the old cows and bulls as they showed the youngsters this new waterhole, or that trail, where a certain fruit was found. The miles faded into the dust behind them as the blue sky, that was not yet polluted by rude noise or engine trails, formed a cathedral roof over them. Occasionally they saw the strange-looking hairless ape that was at best only a minor threat. These hairless apes had strange round plants that they lived in, and were able to harness the big fires sometimes seen on the savannah into small circular enclosures, also called a campfire nowadays. But this ape somehow magicked a wonderful crop of plants that tasted delicious. The only problem, that said ape took objection to these strange delicacies being eaten and tried to chase you away, mostly without success. Sometimes the old boy elephants would need to rest for a while, resting under the shade of the big mimosa trees or sycamore fig trees with their huge roots. There they would rest, thinking old man's thoughts, thinking of open trails, females, and composing stories, mainly exaggerated, to tell to the younger bulls as part of their education. He would sometimes scold the baboons into screaming their daily emergencies as they would disturb his slumber as they passed through. The heat of the day faded down to the sun. The old boys would feel refreshed and the juniors would squeal and play around them. The leading female would signal with a belly rumble that it was time to move on. The elephants are matriarchal, which means there's a female in charge. You can tell it's a female by the angular forehead, as you can be seen here, as opposed to the more rounded head of the male. The African night would envelop them in a silvery moonlight glow. As silent as wreaths, they would melt back into their own private departure lounge of jungle or forest. Through the years, savannah, forest, jungle, riverbed and mountains they would wander, The babies would become teenagers and petulant. New calves would be born. Old bulls down to their last set of teeth would grow malnourished and get grumpy. Their temples caving in, and their footpads worn away by miles of Africa, their ears ragged by innumerable thorn trees, they would suddenly say their goodbyes, stroke the youngsters with their trunks, give the younger adults a last piece of advice. Before taking their leave, they would amble off somewhere to die, their bones joining the millions of others scattered around this huge, dark continent. Through thousands and thousands of miles behind them, their dung piles would lie fertilizing the ground. The old places where they used to throw mud over themselves would still be muddy, but for other species of animals and other elephants to come in. Onward and onward they would go, these survivors, like a phalanx, free from thoughts of survival and threat, happy and secure in their natural home. Years would pass. History would change. The country would change. Boundaries would suddenly appear along with the human expansion, with its resultant politics and upheavals. Imagine, if you will, a herd of elephants suddenly arriving in a lush, verdant, beautiful area, playing, uprooting, feeding, and just wallowing in the joy of existence. After a while, the signal from the lead female would sound, and the whole herd of mothers, fathers, grandparents, and young would assemble. Then with a blast of sound would move out. Suddenly, with a path set out in their psyche and a map in their brain, stretching away into the distance, they would abruptly come to a halt. Barring their route is a strange silvery obstruction, stretching either side into the distance. Unable to go around it, over it, or even through it, they stand confused and slightly alarmed. Reluctantly, they have no choice but to turn back to the area where they have just fed, ravaging the bush once again that has not had a chance to recover. A drought moves in. Rainfall dries up, water holes dry up. Once again they try to move on where the rains are, but once again the path is blocked by the strange silvery bush. Slowly they start to manifest alarm, and they start to lose condition, as the first signs of an unusual, unnatural behavior pattern starts to manifest itself. Youngsters are denied the learning curve associated with distance and diet. Tusks grow smaller, as essential nutrients are divided to the body instead. Suddenly, the stick, hairless apes become more numerous, and maddeningly the succulent plants they harbour are now on the other side of this strange silver bush. Just to incidentally let you know, the strange silver bush is actually a game fence. Strange white birds high in the sky make a rude noise, as suddenly the world gets noisier. One day, strange bushes that move come towards them, belching a foul smoke, i.e. Land Rovers. Hairless apes move towards them with strange sticks that they point in their direction. The thunder that is normally heard only in the sky, come from these sticks, and the first bullets hit home. What has just been described is the impact that human habitation and game fencing had on the age-old migration routes and the subsequent wildlife management schemes implemented to protect the environment. In other words, welcome to game conservation 20th century style, with elephants being herded into areas where they are culled and shot and killed because there is too many of them. Unfortunately, migration was and still is the incredibly powerful engine that drives the largest segment of the natural world. Now, leaving elephants, I'm going to leave you with two pictures from a book called The End of the Game by Peter Beard. One of them is an elephant herd, more or less in the beginning of the turn of the last century. That is one herd of elephants. I mean, elephants used to number thousands in a herd. The other one is a herd seen from the sky, and that is one herd of elephant in the turn of the last century. Nowadays the biggest herd we get may be up to 50 if you're lucky. And you see a herd that big, imagine the habitat they will use to sustain them. They eat up to 300 kilograms of food a day. It's about 180 pounds of food a day each one. But with no fences, no farmings, no towns, they wouldn't be seen again. They would cross into another country, then cross into another country after that, and that would be the end of it. So by the time they do come back, if ever, the actual area has had a chance to recover. Now, because we've fenced them in, at best, the second you put a fence around any natural area, it becomes an artificial environment, and it has to be managed as an artificial environment. And unfortunately, each piece of land has what we call a carrying capacity for the different species of animals upon it. So for example, your lions will go for a certain amount of zebra, your zebra will eat a certain percentage of grass, your browsers like your kudu would eat a certain amount of certain trees. So it has a carrying capacity according to how many tree species, how many plant species, etc. in that given piece of ground, called the carrying capacity. You over exceed that carrying capacity, then you have to manage it. So we hunt them and we cull them. Right, moving on, if you don't mind me saying. Every year off the coast of South Africa there occurs what is known as the sardine run. Millions of sardines migrate north, in turn pursued by whales, dolphins, sharks, gannets and all other kinds of seabirds. Often the concentrations are so great that they are washed up on shore to be gathered up in triumph, destined for deep freezers, restaurants and sandwiches. The wildebeest are famous for their great Serengeti migrations, with thousands of animals traversing river, dongas and lions to get to the lush feeding areas. But I'm often quite perturbed by the traffic jam of safari vehicles, buses and Land Rovers bristling with camera-toting tourists, sometimes actually lining the migration corridor like grandstands at the Grand Prix. The biggest migration, however, is the billions of tons of plankton that migrate every year to the surface, every night from the lower depth of the oceans to feed, absorbing carbon dioxide and taking it back down with them as dawn breaks. So what they do is that they sponge up the carbon dioxide and then take it down to the bottom of the ocean and they get rid of it. This happens every day, billions and billions of times around the world. Our swallows migrate using the stars in their intercontinental journeys, a fact we discovered by putting them into a planetarium and changing the hemispheres in the planetarium and observing their flight pattern changing. Landmarks are also used with great effect. Even dung beetles, scrabbling along a dirt track in Africa, uses the Milky Way to navigate a straight line. Great white sharks migrate to areas unknown. Whales migrate to feeding grounds. The list goes on. Even water and air migrate, with the great ocean currents and atmospheric streams that circle our planet, regulating the climates, keeping everything in balance, and the seasons secure. However, we get to narrow things down inside the massive migration to the species themselves, a phenomenon I've named as herd mentality. Physical movements and body language. One thing I did observe and note is a silent method of communication that is ongoing and detailed. Now I stood at this waterhole in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve and I was watching a herd of zebra and wildebeest busy drinking, swishing their tails as they keep going. People think it's for flies. It's not for flies, it's for communication. But what happened there is that as they were feeding, because their eye level is on the same level as the tail, that tail stops and the head comes up. It's a warning signal. The result is that because the eye of the grazing animal is on the tail, he sees that tail stop, all the heads come up. Somehow there is a threat in the area, and they are aware. Something is seen, something is smelt, something is perceived. Then they all bolt, all get out the air as fast as possible. The zebra heading one way, wildebeest going the other. Unfortunately, in this situation, the alarm was justified, and there was a young male lion in the area, and he surged forward and he made a kill. So as you can see by the photographs there, they are reacting to stimulus. They're reacting to the body language of the one before them. Now, research has shown that the American coyote often sits and carefully observes a herd of pronghorn deer in the distance. By focusing on the mother singularly and plotting her head movements and distance, the actual coyote sits and it triangulates and works out where she has hidden her baby foal, going by just by the movement of her head and where she is staring. A feat of deduction unsurpassed. In the predator world, the herd mentality is even more pronounced. In this case, it shall be called pack mentality or pride mentality. Cape, hunting dogs and hyena often get to run an animal to death, intercepting it with a prearranged system of relays to make the animal fall exhausted and eventually killed. They do the same with lions as well. Hyenas often get to gang up on a lion on a kill, and eventually they will chase her off because she cannot afford to take a hyena bite, because if she does, she can't feed her cubs or she can't hunt, and then she will die. Lions hunt by stealth and ambush, often using strategically placed females to collide with the prey whilst in full run from another female, the impact bringing the animal down. Now, nature works in a system of numbers to promote the ecosystem, and pretty much here's how it goes. On the solitary, you get the leopard on its own all the time. Okay, then you get the pair, right, 2 breeding species. After that, you get the family, right, which would be your pride, Cape hunting dog, whatever. After that, you get the harem, impala or zebra, and there's always one male in charge and mating. Then you get the matriarchal, which are your hyena and your elephants. Elephant and hyena, always a female in charge of the group. Then you get the oligarchy, group of males on their own in charge of a group of females, i.e. the baboons. You get arena, example the rutting season, with the area where the 2 males fight for the services of the females. After that, you get the temporary association, loose groups who hang out for a while, for example impala, zebra. Then you get the aggregation, herds of different species in one area, often for protection and grazing. Lastly, you get the caste system, like the termites. Right, they have a very highly established hierarchy. Right, coming to relevance to ourselves. The human baby is born as a blank canvas, yet is also an unique individual. Scientists have recently discovered that the human baby can distinguish right from wrong at birth. It is responsive to certain sounds and vibrations outside of itself, as when in the Bible John the Baptist jumped in the womb when Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, announced to John's mother that she was pregnant. Where in the animal kingdom, the responsibility of the mother is geared towards protecting and nurturing the physical side of existence. The human mother's responsibility is geared towards the psychological as well as the physical. Elephants and rhino, along with higher primates such as gorillas and chimpanzees, share a few of the human's responsibilities in this regard, but they are geared more towards advice on survival than towards forming a personality with inbuilt spirituality that is both unique and individual to human beings. Now, Coming from a broken home, I went to a very, very tough boarding school deep in the African bush. I was part of the hierarchy where violence was the norm in dormitories, and the lower you were in the system, the more you were punched, beaten up, etc. However, as you climbed through the ranks from a junior to a senior, you were shown more respect. Before finally, as a final year matriculant, let's call it in South Africa, which your final year at school, you dished out the punches, had your personal skivvies or servants, had a girlfriend, you ate first in the dining hall, etc. There we had a mixture of the caste system and oligarchy, much like the baboons and gorillas, with the teachers and headmaster being the ultimate rulers, much like the silverback gorilla. Temporary associations and families where sport teams played against a competitive opposing side were part of the rule, much like giraffes and wild dogs. The only problem with this is that after spending a few years at the top of the tree, we left school, only to face compulsory national service, where once again you were shot down to the level of human plankton, having to rise through the ranks again. The big difference is that this time you were in an open, hostile conflict with your own species, in an active war over territory, ideology or politics. With our universal intelligence and abilities, we have perfected warfare technology to the level that we could wipe out a planet. The only problem is we've only got one. Excuse me. The military has been instrumental in moulding the human psyche into a unified force by breaking a large body of men down psychologically and then rebuilding them into a killing machine. Unlike termites that are genetically modified by the workers to become a soldier bent only on attack and defense, the human soldier has to be reprogrammed in order to kill and destroy his own species. One is reminded of the endless threshing machine of the First World War and the Battle of the Somme, where thousands of soldiers were shot down minute after minute, hour after hour, until the numbers killed between morning and noon numbered 12,000 plus. Unlike ants and termites, where the attacking is unthinking, fearless and sacrificial, this charnel play was actually full of personal fear, reservations and horror. Soldiers have written about shooting to miss rather than have one more death to have to deal with later. Now, religion is the biggest mass spiritual hypnotism and has been for millennia. Our present age and society is unfortunately reflective of this. The human mind can be warped by religion to barely resemble its former self, and black dripping hatred replaces understanding and empathy. Savagery, savagery, a basic and necessary part of our psyche, is magnified to become all-encompassing, with each act taking the perpetrator closer to hell and further away from himself. There is one thing that I will call the crowd animal. That is where a large group of people become incapable of personal thought and think and behave as one unified entity. I have seen this in the military in African townships, where a crowd whipped up by ideology and fancy speeches to commit the most unspeakable acts of carnage. The blank face, the unblinking stares and the slack mouth all show a state of mass hypnotism that spreads like wildfire until the crowd is one dumb animal ready to explode. Seen it again, though in a much less volatile form, in football hooliganism, and also as well as political rallies and other situations where the emotions are high enough to leave the individual to coalesce with others into a miasmic spiritual cloud that hovers above them and then descends onto the mass of people it originated from, and it starts to control them. The Nuremberg rallies, Hitler, his face contorted, arms careening wildly, cold eyes staring and piercing in equal measure, yet his words pregnant with power, washing over the blank staring thousands, remoulding their thinking through fear and power. I don't need to really elaborate any more on what happened there. The Russian and the North Korean army marching past the present dictator, goose-stepping like a fleshy automaton, not an individual thought amongst them, all ready to kill and annihilate, followed by their rumbling, pathetic nuclear missiles, looking just like what they are, phallic symbols of vanity, ready to ejaculate mushroom clouds of death, not miracles of life. As I've said before, a human being completely alone would soon become hopelessly insane from loneliness. A crowd at a rock festival enjoy each other completely and naturally, all for a good time and a shared love of music. Crowds at a hate-filled rally, lose their sense of self as hate takes the psyche away from the person to join with the psyche of the others, ready to explode into interaction. The difference between the two is universal. Love is natural, complete, and in harmony. Hate is unnatural, never-ending, and jangles discordantly with the laws of the universe. I am reminded of the Jonestown massacre, where the obviously demonically possessed the Reverend Jim Jones held such a leash on the crowd animal, they told him to kill themselves, and he did. As you will notice, I've not put an image to this, as I think the black image says it all, because I think we've all got the mental images from the news and from that, and I don't think I want to elaborate on that any more than needs to, except the black is just for the number of people that he killed. It seems that we have a price to pay for our vastly superior intelligence and spirituality, and that is the ability to be manipulated almost against our will. Music trends are a prime yet benign example. You dress a certain way, you behave a certain way, wear your hair a certain way, even look and speak a certain way, all tied into the music style that you listen to. Rock stars howl from the stage about being yourself, being individual, non-conformist, etc., to a crowd of thousands, all with the same style t-shirts, jeans, hairstyles and attitude. Fashionistas eagerly seek out the latest trends and fashions, eagerly buying whatever gets to perambulate down the catwalk. Yet put them in a room and they all look the same, high-class clothing on beautiful people. Churches, in my opinion, are the worst offender. Preaching fear and hellfire, they batter people into a conformist lifestyle, where every thought is judged, every natural instinct is condemned, and every natural action analysed until the God-sized chip on your shoulder is just too big to carry. Thou shalt not is preached and preached and preached until the life that God gave you to live abundantly is replaced by fear, and some stupid to ludicrous spiritual points system where God gives debit or credit points on the thought you had, the words you said, and the action you partook, all heading to either paradise or some spiritual nightmare called hell. This is dangerous, and I think it's a stench in my own and God's nostrils. I have seen young people robbed of their youth by this extreme and dangerous false doctrine. Once again, crowd animal, but this time on a threatening spiritual level. And yes, I do find it fascinating, I really do. I have never seen, neither will I see, the natural world being subject to the psychological crowd animal so prevalent in humans. Wildebeest are driven to migrate, but that is a natural drive for the procreation of its species. Elephants are in groups where hatred plays no part and discipline is practiced with love and harmony. Herds of impala, zebra, giraffe and wildebeest congregate together for feeding, protection and companionship, and are unaffected by dictatorships or orators with huge speakers and personal agendas. I have been in a crowd of people and have felt nervous. I have been in a herd of elephants and felt peace. People are programmable, animals are not. A dung beetle, that was pushing its board along a sand road, has more personal choice and freedom than a crowd animal baying mindlessly for blood, or the dumb, silent, staring crowd animal ready to explode on command. We need to learn from this. But unfortunately, with wealth and greed such a cohesive, powerful force and so prevalent in human society, I don't think we will. Okay, that concludes Lecture 2, Module 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Something to think about. And yes, it's a very, very, very deep subject, very emotive subject regarding crowds, people, how we interact with each other. But that is the basis of this course. So as we get deeper into it, and we get more involved how this instincts that we have towards each other and the natural world can be tied into what is the real reason that they're there. We'll see you on the next lecture. Thank you very much.